to our final day of the seminar about the missionary life cycle. Yesterday, Ryan shared about the pre-field preparations, and we heard it's rather prepare and prevent than repair and repent. He touched on the calling, how important it is that people are sure on their calling. We talked about support group for emotional support, financial support, prayer support. And we also talked about fundraising. This morning I sent out some further resources from Ryan. So check your inbox, you should have them there for the whole area for pre-field preparation. On Wednesday, we had Hannah speaking about on-field phase. And today we're moving forward towards the end of the missionary life cycle, where Dick Elisha will share about re-entry. Dick Elisha joined YWAM in 2009, and then he served for several years in YWAM Herrnhut in the staff development team. In 2016, he came back to the Netherlands. And that's also where he did his Bachelor of Theology. And in that context, he wrote his thesis about re-entry with Dutch missionaries. Since 21, he works part-time on the member care team for Weidenheidebeck. And since this year, he started to coach people who are in a re-entry season, expats, missionaries. I had the privilege to get to know Dick Elisha about a year ago. And something I see and appreciate in him is this genuine and deep confidence that things will turn out well. Now, I don't know him so well. I assume that's the fruit of his own processing of challenging life situations. Maybe we will hear more when he shares. Another thing that I really enjoy and appreciate working with Dick is his communication. His communication is full of life and full of creativity. And in the way how he shares, I hear how much it is on his heart to care for people and to see them thrive. So, Dick Elisha, thank you very much for taking the time to teach this afternoon and just to share your lessons learned about re-entry. Let me pray and then I hand it over to you. Father, thank you so much that you travel our journey with us. And Father, thank you that you fully see and fully embrace every season in our life, every stage in our life, Father. Father, thank you that you walk with us in the preparations, in the ministry, and in the re-entry. And your desire is to see each phase full of life. And Father, I pray that you translate into our situations what we now will learn from Dick Elisha. Father, in Jesus' name, amen. Dick Elisha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And you make me blush with your positive words. Thank you so much for that. So I'm super excited to talk about re-entry today, and thank you all for joining again. And yeah, my name is Dick Elisha Alwitz, and I am Dutch. Like Heidi was saying, 2009, I joined YWAM and did my DTS in South Africa. So, my heart is still there sometimes. Also the weather there. But so now I live in the Netherlands, and my wife is not a YWAM, and I'm part-time in YWAM. I'm excited today to talk about re-entry, and you might see it over here. There's a little logo, Return Well, and I started a small company this year, and to coach people who are returning, and that might be missionaries, that might be other non-missionaries, like just general expats. But I'm super excited to talk about reentry because I went through it myself. And like Heidi was saying, I did my thesis on that because, well, I was going through the process. So I was like, well, let's go and dive deeper into it. So today I want to take you on a journey, and I assume most of you are memory care workers. So I'll be focusing a little bit on practical side. If you're not a memory care worker, doesn't really matter. You'll learn a lot still. I'll try to compact it as much as I can. If you have questions, feel free to put it into the chat, but I also try to give more space in between sections of the training where you can ask questions, because I understand it's a very maybe unclear topic, or yeah, maybe just random questions come up. Feel free to ask them. That's why we're here. We're here to learn and to process a lot of things. So re-entry with excellence. So I believe that we can return home with excellence, but unfortunately, many times there is a little bit of a less of a good experience about returning home. So that's why we're also sharing it today. Today there we have the three sections: pre-field, on-field, and today we call it post-field. So post-field, it's I wouldn't per se call it post-field, but it's easy to remember because maybe it's just the changing of field. But yes, it is something about going home to your origin, your country of origin, or sometimes they call it the country of your passport. But for me, I went through it in 2016, and it was a very difficult season, a season that I didn't really understand well what's going on. So again, that was the reason why I also did my thesis on it, because after a couple of years, I realized that I could have done maybe things differently. And the thought of like, I wish I knew that before, was very came often to my mind. I was like, I wish I knew that a little bit more. So if we go to this next slide here, you see again where we are. We're at the end, the re-entry phases, and you see that two steps: readjustment to home and build relationship, and the second one is adjustments to home, finding new role and integration. So we're going to talk about that today a little bit more. But re-entry, what is it exactly? Because it can mean different things. It could mean leaving missions maybe, or reversed, or just culture shock, or is it a long furlough? Is it maybe new passions that you're trying to pursue? Re-entry is this returning somewhere. You're returning home, but for some people that is not home anymore. So sometimes, we're aware that it might be a culture shock. Most people that I talk to are aware of the changes of values that you might experience, because you might have done that before when you went on a furlough. But it's a bigger process, I believe, than just a reverse culture shock or a culture shock. We'll go a little bit deeper into it later on, but I would like you guys to already think a little bit about, hey, what is reentry for you? So I would like to get a little bit of a feel of where you guys are at thinking about reentry. So you guys have a wonderful chat box, and I want to give you guys 5 minutes. Think a little bit about what you think reentry is. So when you think about reentry or returning or reintegration into your home country or whatever you want to call it, but you're leaving the mission field, or someone else does, but in your mind, what would reentry mean? Think about it. What does reentry mean for you right now? What do you think about when you hear the word reentry? So that was amazing. I'm happily surprised about all the things that you are sharing here. So if everybody can just take a look at the chat box. And so what we see a lot is, for example, change of roles. Leo, you were saying it. Ryan saying going back to your home country, leaving your missionary career, closing the chapter of missions in the countries you served. Change of focus, ending a season, entering a new location. I see refocusing, reconnecting, relearning, redefining things, unlearning Warhamite language, new directions and end of cycles, leaving your home, live train from the front passenger carriage and returning to your home live train on the carriage. Things are not the same. So I think you guys got a really good grasp of a couple of aspects of reentry, because it says a lot about the culture shock effect, what that you have to change. It's a changing of season, which is also we can translate into the word transition. And Ryan also talked about it yesterday. Um, Transition, it's just a difficult season, where you have to sometimes let go of things and relearn new things. And you guys are really mentioning that in the chat. So hey, good job. I like it. I'm done. That was the training for the day. You guys already know everything. So hey, Heidi, back to you. Now, Heidi left out the part that I also like humor a lot. So I'll try not to do it too much today. But thank you guys so much for all these answers. I like it. I might steal some of these comments from you guys. All right, so I compromised it into one sentence. Reentry is the whole process of returning to one's nation, which starts at the guest country and continues until an individual is fully and successfully integrated in one's nation of origin. Maybe you got to read that again. Reentry is the whole process of returning to one's nation, which starts at the guest country and continues until an individual is fully and successfully integrated in one's nations of origin. So the definition for that is that it's not just a reverse culture shock. It's not just a short period where you just, after 3 months you're done. From moving there back to your home country, it starts often it starts at the nation that you are, and I call it the guest country, and it ends at one point in the future. How long that period is going to be is never the same. It's for everybody different, and only the most important or the most difficult season for most people that you are aware of is that first 6 months of returning home, because most of you probably already experienced that when you went home for furlough, when you went home maybe in between seasons or changing from one nation to another nation. That culture shock, that you become very aware of that culture shock, because you're seeing the differences in your values and your principles of that culture and your old culture, and you go through a very confusing time, and then you learn new values and new principles of the hosting culture. So it's a very that's one big part that is part of reentry, but reentry is the whole process, and that starts most of the time when you're still at your guest country, and it ends somewhere in the future. But the confusion that most people have is that it's a 3 to 6 month period where you can just learn and you feel a little bit not so happy, but then it's all over. So my proposal is it's a little bit longer. So reentry, why would you do reentry? And so there are different kinds of situations and reasons for returning to your home country. It could be that you are having a call or circumstances that let you go out of missions. So you're leaving missions in general. It could be that you go to your home country, but you are staying in missions, that you're either working with a missions organization or your church, and maybe you do church planting. You're very involved in church ministry. Sometimes it's because of a trauma that you leave your guest country and you go to your home country because of that trauma. That's just a little bit of the three biggest groups that we have encountered so far. And then the next thing is the context is always unique, because it could be that you have families that or a couple families that have kids or singles. The impact that reentry has, or the confusion or the difficult season or the success often is different per situation. For everybody, it's different. Even when you can't compare one couple or one family to another family that went to reentry, because it might depend on the next thing, warm or cold culture too. Did you is your home, is your guest country a warm culture, but your nationality originally is a cold culture? For example, for me, if I will be in Thailand and I will go back to the Netherlands, there's a very huge difference in culture compared to warm and cold. That might have impact on the way how I will return. And the third one is duration of time on the field. If you are leaving for 2 years and you return home, it is a difficult season. I'm not saying that's easy, but the impact it has is less than when you're longer. So if you're longer on the field for 5 to or longer years, the impact on going back home is most of the time bigger. So all of these things that I'm saying, I, we did the thesis and we did some research there, and there's unfortunately a lot of scientific research done on reentry, which helps us as missionaries comprehend what this whole process entails. So why is the topic of why reentry? What is the reason for it? Why is that why is that important to think about? It's important to think about because it will determine how it can help you, and it can help your people that you are serving to make a plan ahead. What is the circumstances that you are in right now, and where are you going? How is that gonna affect your reentry? Reentry, as I was saying, is a phase. It has different phases, and I would like to go into the next slide. And yesterday, Ryan was sharing a little bit about that too. On the left, you will see the Pollock and the Narakan transition cycle. That's a cycle that starts on the left side at the bottom, starts at the home, the guest country, and you are settled, and are very involved. Then you decide to leave. There's a process there. You have the third step, that's transition, and then you are moving, really physically moving to your home country. Then you are at one point you start entering, and it's getting readjusted again, and then the last one, re-involvement. There are different words for these. This is from David Pollock, from also in his book, The Third Culture Kit. It's in there. What it does is it gives you a little bit of an overview what transition does, that it has different phases. And it's very good to be aware of what phase an individual might go through, or where you are in when you're going on your own reentry. On the right side, you see a different overview. And this overview has to do with culture shock. We call this the W diagram, or I'm not sure the right word for that in English, but you see it in the first part. When you leave when you go on the field, you will have that first U. It starts with a honeymoon. It's a conflict. You get the culture shock. You recover from that. You adjust, and you're back in your normal phase. But when you go home, you will go through that again. You start at your honeymoon because you maybe enjoy the fruits of your home nation, or that you really enjoyed. Maybe you missed the fruits, literally the fruits that are there, or maybe the nice meals, or just the comfort of getting to speak into your own original nation language again. There might be some culture shock then again, as often is recognized. We call that reverse culture shock, is recovery and adjustment. So it looks the same. It goes from up and down, up and down. And what we see on the right is not the whole process what we see on the left. So that culture shock diagram is a part, and I would say that is between the transition and the entering phase on the left. I don't know if you guys can follow me in that. But so reverse culture shock will happen between transition and entering. And I think the challenge is to really recognize that there might be a longer process after that. But this is just a little bit of an overview on how it's going to look like, um, scientifically speaking. But most of the time, the whole process will look like this. The Grimsel Pass in Switzerland. I just took that picture because it's gonna go all places. You're gonna like, oh, I feel great, yeah, and oh no, no, oh, a corner, another corner. Oh, hit the gas, let go, hit the brake. Woo! I don't know what's gonna happen next on the next corner. No idea. So just a heads up, if you're going into re-entry once, that's gonna be it. It's not gonna be one single road, and you know exactly how it's gonna look like, how it's exactly where the end is, how much traffic there will be on that road, how high the mountain will be, or how deep the valleys are. When can you do a rest stop? You don't know. You just go into it and you just see where it goes. Often that's the experience that most people have. It is not really easy to look into, know from the beginning. So when we go into the 5 phases, the process of transition, it's not just transition. You cannot just say, well, I know how the transition will go, and this method of Pollock, yeah, I got it. I can prepare for that. It's not the same for reentry in that sense. The phases are, you can recognize the different phases that you go into, but most of the time you recognize the phase after you're done with it. What I'm trying to do today is to focus on how can we prepare, and how can we prepare the people around us, people that are maybe are leaving. How can we prepare them for the process that they're going through? So transition, if we look at the middle of that of the diagram of Pollock, you see the transition, and that's often not from that point on. We think we know a little bit what's going to happen because we have reverse culture shock, maybe experienced through furlough or whatever situation. But what people often forget is that it's a long process until you feel fully reintegrated. And there's a challenge there. How are we supporting ourselves if we are the ones that are going through reentry? But also, how are we setting an accountability system in place that will help us go through that process? So I was sharing a couple of things already, but I can also imagine that you already have some questions right now. So I would say, hey guys, do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Peter.
Yes, I was thinking about this with you had the W. You start off with a honeymoon.
Yeah.
I was thinking that that's not always the case.
No.
It depends on where you come from and who you are and where you're going. It could be devastating if you run away from something by going into missions. And the things doesn't turn out at all as what you have expected. You can get into a disaster rather than a honeymoon.
Yep.
So that's just, yeah, I was just thinking about that that might also be one thing. It could be that you enter into this conflict culture shock phase directly, but it also could also be something else.
Yeah. So I thank you for that comment. I appreciate that you're saying that. And so yeah, like I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons or situations that people are leaving or re-entering is because of the trauma, because of the situation, and you're pointing that out. So it's not always that it's a honeymoon when you come back. I totally agree. And it doesn't mean you need to have that a trauma is the reason of leaving, but sometimes it's just very difficult from moment one when you hit the ground in your home nation, and you don't feel happy. It's not great. Yeah, I totally agree. So the honeymoon phase is not per se always happy, but if you prepare well, and we'll come to that later too, we'll try to make it a honeymoon. We'll try to make it something, if it's not related with a trauma or with a conflict that you are leaving and back to your home country, but you can prepare well for it. It might be a honeymoon. It's something you can be excited for. So that's the hope, of course. But I totally agree. Not all situations will have a positive start. Yeah. So thank you for that, Peter.
You mentioned that the longer that you're away, the longer it takes to readjust to your home culture. Is it directly correlated between the years you are gone, or it really just, it depends on the person?
Yeah, thank you, Julian. It depends. It's not correlated together. It just depends on every situation as an individual. But what we've seen and what research also says is that everybody will go to reverse culture shock. Doesn't matter if you left for 6 months or if you left for 60 years. Everybody will go to reverse culture shock. So that's the thing that everybody has to deal with. But for you to feel completely reintegrated and successfully being back in your home nation, that takes, in generally speaking, for people that have been on the field for a longer period of time, it takes longer. There are different things. People, some coaches or psychologists say every year you've left, it takes at least a month after the first 6 months. So if everybody needs about 6 months for their reverse culture shock, and after that you need another month. I disagree with that. I don't see that in the with the people I talk to. I mainly see that it's diverse for everybody. Yeah, it's a bit longer answer to your question, but I hope that answers it a little bit. All right. Well, thank you for that.
I have a question.
Yes.
In your experience, if people have prepared really well,
Mhm.
as best as can, right? Have you seen that the re-entry phase is shortened with a better preparation period?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I do. And that's also why we're doing these kind of trainings, because we want people to be prepared. We do see a difference, and often the people, and it's quite interesting. I did an interview with someone who did member care in another nation and returned to the Netherlands, and I noticed a complete different attitude of the people who I interviewed. I saw a difference in like because you're more aware, and because you put in place a system of accountability, and your social networks are involved and are know about your situation, it helps tremendously for you to fall into a little bit more of a warm bath than instead of a cold bath when you return home. You know, it's your process. Somebody else cannot take over your process, but there can be a lot of support, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And I also tag along with what Ryan was saying earlier, that support around you is so important, and that doesn't start when you return home. At that point, I believe that starts earlier. So that has to do with preparation. So yes, I do see a change. Yeah. Thank you, Esther.
I have a
Somebody else.
question.
Yes. Yeah, bring it on.
It's, I don't know, maybe a bit strange question. I'm a TCK, and I'm actually in the process of, I sent a closure, but I don't have an entry home. So I'm actually in the process. I know there will be closure in the very near future. I'm already in the process. So I was advised to close doors already, but until I know where I'm supposed to enter, so I'm going to take a sabbatical to try and figure out where I'm supposed to go. So that's kind of what I will be doing. I sense closure, I sense an entry, but because I don't know where my new place is, I will be taking time just to pray. Taking a sabbatical. I don't know if other TCKs have the same problem. I come from several countries. I guess it's a TCK issue.
Yeah. So that's it's wonderful. I'm so happy to meet TCK, because I think that's you guys are world citizens. So for the ones that don't know, third culture kids There are children from missionary families that are not really affiliated with one nation. Maybe their passport says, but they have more experience in other countries than their passport. So it's a very difficult topic for most TCKers, and it needs attention. It needs focus for when you return, for the preparation. So it depends a little bit. Like you can't really say that you're re-entering if you for you as an individual.
The word re-entry doesn't line up for me.
No, it doesn't apply in the same sense because you're not returning to your home country. But for you, it's the challenge, and for many other TCKers, to find themselves and to feel comfort in their individual personality, because they have no sense of like your parents. They know I come from whatever country, and you don't feel that same connection. And you go through a complete different process. So that's also one of the things that, like I was saying earlier, if it's a family that is returning, and so with families and kids, often they're TCKers, the parents cannot relate to that process often, so 100%. So help is needed there to not do it alone, and also experts need to be really involved with children. But for you as a TCKer, that's definitely processing continually. Indeed, what you were saying, you feel like the season is ending, but who am I? And throughout the years, developing that sense.
Thank you.
All right. Somebody else a question?
As we agreed that it's a long process, or presumed to be going to be a long process, when is the curve or in the way, when is or the frequency of debriefing post pre-field, post-field? Would you be able to comment on that?
So do I understand you correctly that you're asking about the timeline for an individual?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's very vague question to start with, because we all agree that it's basically very much dependent on the case of individual or family. So but yet, since you come from quite scientific or academic side of things, would there be any suggested frequency or timeline? When is the good time to do debrief the frequency of it? That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's a good question. So thank you for clarifying also your question. And so scientifically spoken, they say it takes you at least 6 months to feel a little bit more normal. So that's the reverse culture shock aspect. So you're not as shocked, and that moment of like, okay, all right, let's do it. You get a little bit more energy. You maybe find out you found yourself a little bit more, but you still struggle with the differences and not feeling at home. So 6 months for sure. You can expect 6 months of difficulties, the first 6 months, because what we see often the first 3 months, if you're preparing well and you got everybody excited, including yourself, for returning, that first 3 months is awesome, just like furlough. Often you're like, you visit people, you maybe go on holiday, you eat the food that you like, and then after 3 months everybody's like, oh yeah, you're back, and you're not in your role is like, what are you going to do? You had 3 months off, and now and that's the moment that often it starts with, oh, okay, I don't feel so much understood. Your church is like, okay, man, you want to preach, you want to do this, you want to serve here, serve there, and then you're like, I'm not ready for that, because then a tiredness starts to come in, and then after another 3 months, often most people start to like, all right, find a little bit of an adjustment. And that's, I think, the most difficult season after that. If you struggle with a lot of emotions, what most people do with re-entering, that period after that's a very lonely period, and you don't know often where you are at, where your emotions are. And so that period after that, there's not really a good time frame to talk about. We don't know. It depends on every individual. But I would say that most people that have left for 5+ years on the mission field will take at least 2 to 3 years to feel normal back in their home country. And that's not something to be afraid of, but that is reality that often people struggle for a longer period of time. It all depends on how much you prepare. It depends on, for example, and are you leaving missions completely, or are you still involved in missions or in church a lot? Because that still gives you a quick sense of a role and a position you have. Because many people struggle also with losing their role. So if you're involved in missions and you're led an orphanage or whatever, you come back home and you're like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet. But then you have all these conflicts going on in your head and your heart about the different culture that you need to adjust to your old culture. You need to find a new calling. People don't understand you because you don't feel at home yet. So it's a lonely process. It's emotionally very conflicting situation. And so if you're returning to a mission or a role or a calling, that often helps to smooth things over. But it's still a long process. That's a very long answer, Leo. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, did it answer a little bit? All right, somebody else? Question so far?
I was, you qualified a bit in your last answer, but I was thinking that furlough and re-entry are totally different things. And I mean, in furlough, you might be a bit overwhelmed by all the yogurts in the shelf in the supermarket, but those are things you can normally deal with. It's not gonna throw you into a big crisis. But I mean, identity is one thing. You mentioned that it's very. I mean, if you're on furlough, you know where you belong, and you're just visiting, and whatever is going on, I mean, you can shrug things off. But if you're in re-entry, then you have to face the things, and you have a totally different set of decisions.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment and adding to that, because that's exactly what it is. It's a visit that you do for furlough, and so you always have it in the back of your mind. I'm going back to my mission field. I'm going back to where I came from. But if you're re-entering, you're completely immersed. You uprooted your life. You took out that. If you take out a plant, Ryan always shares that example. If you take out that plant, what does it take for you to, be rooted again? And that takes a while. It takes the right ground. It takes the right sunlight. It takes around the right amount of water. That just takes a while. And a furlough is indeed very different. All right, we can move on to the next step. So we had the road. Look at that beautiful road. Oh yeah, for the ones that don't know, I love driving a motorcycle. Whenever I have time, I try to do that. So a road like this is also very exciting for motorcyclists. So whoever does that and recognizes that. All right. The most common issues. So we touched a little bit on it already, but the first two are the biggest that we discovered. There are many others, and they're all different. But for most people, loneliness is the top number one problem. They all feel lonely. However you prepare, how long you prepare beforehand, or if you don't prepare, loneliness is part of reentry. And that's just very difficult. And because why is loneliness such a big thing? Because even though you as member care or member care worker prepare the person that is leaving and you stay in contact with them maybe even afterwards, they're often alone in their own process in their home country. Culture shock is very difficult. You have no calling, like I was saying earlier. You try to explain it to others in your church, in your social network, your family, your friends. they don't understand it. And so it's a very lonely process. And if you you don't involve people in it at all, that becomes even a bigger, lonelier issue. And so what also happens is that people are not aware of it. You're not aware that the emotional impact it has on reentry. That's goes along with loneliness, um, because you're not aware of your emotional status at that point, because you don't talk or you didn't expect it. Loneliness comes in. But sometimes maybe you've experienced it yourself. And when you were going to your field, your mission field, and you encountered culture shock, you were first maybe always an extrovert, but then you get to this country that you don't know a lot about. You had conflicts because you didn't understand the culture, and you turn into an introvert. Why does that happen? For a season, you're an introvert because you look, oh, everything is overwhelming, and you don't understand your own process so well, but you're also not always so aware of it. So loneliness, in the same way, it happens to reentry. Loneliness comes into, you're not aware of your own process, and people feel lonely. So at the end of the sessions, I will on this session I'll talk a little bit about how to prepare, and so we need to tackle loneliness as much as we can as individuals and as MC workers. Well, I'll come back to that a little bit later. So the second one, adaptation problems, and I'm not sure if that's a right English word for it. I translated it from Dutch, but I believe it is. Psychologically, this is one of the biggest two. This is the second one. How do you adapt to the situation that you are in? And it has to do with the culture shock you are experiencing. So that's the first part. How do I deal with all these emotions and all these different norms, the values and principles that I'm different now, but I'm coming back to my home nation. So that typical culture shock really is really difficult. But after that, after the culture shock is a little bit lifted up, how do you relate as a person to your home nation? How do you relate in the society? Because maybe you don't care about all these politics that are going on, or the problems that are there. You're like, well, you think that's a problem? Go back to my guest country. Those had some problems. So how do I relate to my circumstances? Often people are not aware of it. And that's the same thing with the loneliness thing. Your emotions are not really great, so you start to go a little bit internal, and there's a lot of things going on in your heart, but you're not sure how to deal with that. And think about the TCKs we're talking about. So kids that are coming out of the mission field, it's a huge problem for them. And if you're a parent and you are trying to guide your kids into it, you probably have no idea. So it is really difficult, especially for children, to adapt to that home nation that they should call home, but they have no idea because they feel completely different. The third one is finances. Many people struggle with finances because they didn't prepare for, and this actually is more focused on Western cultures and Western nations. But the finances is often an issue because they didn't prepare well for having the right budget for it. They often go on, sometimes they go with short notice. They leave their guest country and they go back to their home country, and maybe there's financial support. It's like, well, you're back now, so maybe 3 more months, but after that, we're gonna take out the money. We're gonna stop it. Maybe the church will stop. Like you're back. You can get a job now. And maybe you didn't prepare well for that. So finance is often a struggle, and we see that happening with especially the husbands in marriages. They are focused, and that's also, I can speak from experience, but I did do some research on it because they want to just have my experience on it. But it happens a lot that husbands feel very responsible for their well-being financially, and they focus on that a lot. And also that has effect on after the marriage and the relationships within the families. It brings a lot of tension, and we see a lot of struggles also with marriages afterwards and years afterwards because of that transition that was very hard. The TCK, so I was talking about it, third culture kids. Yeah, we covered that a little bit. And I put almost at the bottom, spiritual. Spiritual, for missionaries, it's so difficult to find your place back home. Because of that loneliness, you start to ask a lot of questions, or maybe not even aware of it, but you can't really, if you had such an important position, maybe as a missionary, you did something very important, and then you come back home and you're like, what am I going to do right now? I'm just going to have an office job or construction job or whatever. You feel like your sense of importance has changed so much. Your role has changed, and that does sometimes something with your spiritual being. Not only that, but also all the emotional problems that go along with it, and maybe also when you are struggling in your marriage or with your children, or not being understood by your social networks. It starts to your heart starts to have a big impact on your spiritual life and well-being. And at the end, I put in big bold letters, stress. Stress. That's just continually happening during reentry. There's a lot of stress moments, especially when you're really reentering into completely, on field to off field. So not involved in missions organization in your home country, not involved in a lot of ministry. When you're submerged, you or maybe your family, and you have to do it all by yourself. Stress, stress, stress. Emotionally, culturally, socially, spiritually, all kinds of things are under stress. And so, yeah, as you can hear me, it's not a great place to be, and people are really struggling with that often. So those are the most common issues. They're not the only issues, of course. There are many more. Yes, so these happen often when you have arrived back in your home country, and when you go into culture shock, these issues will come up. I would like to just give it a little bit back to you guys. Are there any issues that when you think about these issues, that we haven't talked about yet? When you think about, okay, I heard about it from reentry, maybe experienced some things myself, maybe you went to reentry a while back ago, or just something that you guys are like, hey, yeah, that's something I didn't hear yet, or something you did hear about and you just want to talk about a little bit more.
So I wanted to throw something in there.
Yeah.
It's probably covered under loneliness and adaptation problems, but I found my first reentry when I came back, the big issue I had was a lack of point of reference for the people I was coming back in to do life with. Many of the people that were essentially in my home country, they would ask questions, but without understanding what they were asking, and would quickly glaze over. So like, well, how was your trip? Or how was your time? Or something like that. And I would begin to try to frame what I had experienced, and you'd get that sort of glassy-eyed look almost immediately. Really what they wanted to hear was, oh, it was great. And that was it. And as a young missionary who'd never experienced any of this before, I naively said, oh, you actually want to hear about what happened. And I would try to share it, but there was no point of reference. The disparity between the first world environment and the, what is commonly the mission field is so vast that they would struggle to have any connection point with what was out there. And I think that really contributed probably mainly to that feeling of loneliness and adaptation issues. But I don't know if there's something you can speak to in terms of a way to sort of bridge that gap. Honestly, it probably speaks to why member care is so necessary, why there needs to be somebody there to receive people home from whatever their experience is, because of how hard it is to bridge that essentially Grand Canyon. I mean, it's a chasm so wide sometimes. So maybe, I don't know if that's a springboard point to kind of speak into that a little bit.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I 100% agree. I think everybody recognizes that experience, even when they go on a furlough, and when you share about the things that you're going through or went through, and then it doesn't always connect with the people from your social networks or whoever you speak to. But especially with reentry, because at that point you're not going back, you are alone there. You're back in your home country, and you don't have that support or like, oh, I'm going back. At least I'm going back where people understand me or whatever. So yes, that adds to the loneliness. I would definitely put that under loneliness. Is one of the symptoms or one of the factors that go into that, because nobody understands you, and that's why loneliness is being enforced even more, because there's like they have no idea where you're coming from. And so I totally agree, and one of the things that I advocate for is a very by preparing well before you leave, is that your social network is aware of the situation that you are in and where you are coming from. And you can't expect everybody to understand you fully when you come back. It is also a part of just, you have to deal with it sometimes. But as as member care workers, we can try to maybe set up an informative way for even the social networks like churches or friends and family to be aware of what you are going through as an individual coming back, because it's not only not understanding the values and principles that you are struggling with or trying to explain where you are coming from, but also the emotional distress that you are going through. And it adds, if you also have to explain all of that and trying to get them along in your journey, it just adds to all that stress, all that capacity and energy that you have to sow into that season. And that's why it's also so difficult, and loneliness comes up, because you're tired often. You're just practically tired because you're moving from one country to another, and then tired emotionally. Where am I? And the culture shock, and all the things add towards it. So yes, if we could prepare the people, our social networks, before we are leaving, that would be great. That would help that process. So I agree.
If I can just interject then one final thing off of that, how maybe this is a question for later on or whatever, but is there something established in terms of like a curriculum or something that you think would be well served, like your church communities at home before a missionary goes out, or even while they're out, that somebody who is established, who is involved in member care, can help prepare the community to receive missionaries coming back, going to the churches and saying, hey, you guys need to understand what that is. Let me teach you while they're not here. So when they get here, we receive them well. We actually are able to love them through what is going to be a really big challenge. Is that something that is kind of structured into some of what you guys have as a member care program, not just to the members, but also to their communities?
So quick answer, as far as I know, no. There's no curriculum ready. But it is something that we as Member Care Heidelberg in the Netherlands are putting in place. And so Ryan was sharing yesterday about the pre-field situation, where he's even visiting with some of the members that we have under our care. He's going to the church and explaining the situation. And that's just a great step. That's a step one in many steps that we can do as Member Care to prepare the churches, especially churches and social networks, for the situation that you are as an individual will go through. But ready to set go curriculum, no. And most of us here, I believe, are from YWAM, and similar missions. Great. And similar missions organizations are. What happens is that you are more of a franchise as a missionary. Like, you go under the flag of YWAM, but you're an individual, and that adds to the struggles, because it also means that you have more on your back. It also means that we're not responsible as YWAM in general for your well-being when you leave our organization. It's a fluid situation, and I think member care tries to put in more and more and add more and more knowledge and curriculum, as you are saying. We're trying to build upon that so people can use that and build upon that. I must say that the bigger base you are coming from, the more things are ready to do that. And it's
say
so
something?
yeah, go for it.
So I just wanted to say that because I've been with YWAM for almost 40 years, but apart from YWAM, we have the same DNA, we understand each other. I have different friends, different groups of friends within the church, some of them who are not missionaries, others who are from other missions. And so I communicate differently with different people with my different needs. So when I know it's a subject a non-missionary won't understand, I have another missionary person I can contact from another mission. So, and I don't know, I'm thinking when I find my home, wherever I go, those are the people I would go to. And if the others don't understand, it doesn't matter because I have another group of people who do understand me. You see what I mean?
I do. And so that makes it, I think it's a good thing to add to the situation. And it explains even better that it's a very complicated situation. It's complex. And if it would be very easy, if we're just we're personnel, someone else takes care of all that stuff, and we're one organization, everything's being taken care of. It's a very fluid situation, complex, and you have some people that can help you. And I think that's the wisdom we need as mission member care workers. And that's also one of the things that I would like to also trying to add towards this session. Like every situation is individual, it's unique. And so you might have more people in your own network as an individual. So as a member care worker, we can maybe challenge that, like get more people in your network, get from different organizations, get information, go for it. And I think that's important for us as member care workers to see what kind of situation is this individual in, what do they need, and can they get into their own network more and expand that.
Yeah, or have get to know other YWAMers who've re-entered, who've left.
Exactly.
With them.
Exactly. That's also one of the things that I definitely advocate also in the Netherlands, to try to create a pool of people that have re-entered and are now back in the workforce, or not in missions at least, and they can help individuals that are returning. So they have a buddy system. And again, that depends on our member care network here in the Netherlands that we do that. It's not a global thing, or maybe one day in the future, who knows? But it is definitely something that I would advocate for and do, to get a buddy, someone that has re-entered from a similar situation, either a similar country that they went to as a mission field, or as a family, and you connect a father with a father, try to get some resemblances in that, so that they connect on a level in a better way.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So let's go back to the transition cycle. I'm just going to show you guys this a lot, so then you know by heart later on. All right, so as we can see, just ignore the right side, the honeymoon and all that stuff. Ignore that one for now. You just look at the left side. So this is the general transition cycle from Pollock. And the first part, the involvement place, that's when you're settled, when you're in your home country and you're not yet going. You haven't made that decision yet. But as soon as you start to think about or start to make a decision, the leaving phase starts. And yesterday, or was it, I'm not sure if Ryan was sharing the Hannes on Wednesday, but the REFT method is very important in that phase. What REFT stands for, RAFT, the first one is reconciliation. And reconciliation is so important. Before you move, you can reconcile the things that you might need to do, because everything you don't, I remember once a speaker saying in YWAM, the way you finish a season is how you start a season. So if you are have a lot of issues and you haven't resolved, you'll bring those with you to the next phase. So reconcile, whatever you got to do, make sure, try to make it as good as you can when there might be issues or problems. Leave well with your relationships and the situations that you're in. The second one is affirmation. So I would say speak positive words and celebrate. And I really liked it to think about this season that we are in. This week is the Feast of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, one of the biblical feasts. I'm really interested in those feasts, so I like to involve those into this teaching too. But Sukkot is a celebration. It is the last feast every year, and it is the feast of where the Israelites remembered their time of dependence on God in the desert, and that they're celebrating their dependence on God. But it's also a booth, so an open dwelling where there is transparency, but there is a lot of celebration. There is enjoying the fruits because it's also the harvest season of all the fruits and the nuts and the wine, and everything comes together. So celebration. So I would say, indeed, with the affirmation phase of the RAFT acronym, celebrate the relationships you've made, celebrate the relationships that have been built, and the successes you've had, everything that you can just remember. Write it down, do a little debrief for yourself there, like what have I gone through, what are the things I can celebrate. And if you're with the family and with kids, do that there very intentionally. And it's also very important to do it then and not before and not after moving. I would encourage to do that, because the culture shock isn't an issue right there, because you're still in your home, in your guest country. You're still in that country where you can taste and see the things around you where you might have been involved in. So celebrate it with the people you can as much as you can. And then do the farewells. It's a third acronym, the RAFT. From the RAFT, do the farewells. Sit down with people. Say goodbye. And the last one is think destination. So think ahead. So it's a good acronym. It's a raft. So think about the raft in the water. You're floating. So build your raft, do things, and that all happens in the leaving phase. There's a lot of practical things you have to do, and it takes a lot of time. So if you can, start a year before, or latest a half year before deciding to do all the practical stuffs, just doing the raft. But be sure to start processing and start planning for your move. It's a very important step. Again, we talked about traumas, situations that maybe are not anticipated and happen, and maybe because of that you have to leave very soon. That's a completely different situation. You need a lot of counseling, you need help, and that's gonna be difficult when you leave. And we know quite some people, and of course a lot of missionaries deal with this issue. But just to be aware of, like, okay, so there is counseling, there's trauma, the counseling ready for you globally or in your nation. It's very important, of course. But if you are not in that situation, you are able to prepare, do it, prepare, and be ready for it. So whenever you are working with people that are leaving, give them that awareness. Hey, start in time with your process. Start contacting your local church where you might go to. So thinking about the next step, your calling. Because your calling here might end, but what is the next calling? What's the next phase? And that sometimes takes time, and you don't have a clear answer on that. But start processing, because if you do that now before the actual move, it will help you, because after the move you often go into a very emotional state. And when we are transitioning, so we are moving, physically moving, we are going into the couple of phases that we already talked about. All right, so it's just a lot of things that are very practical, maybe, or good things to be aware of for the preparation on a reentry. And so, today I can't really cover everything that goes on during reentry. There's so many different phases, so many different things going on, and it is a very complicated situation for many people. But what I was saying earlier, start early with preparation. Create the right expectations. So either we're talking for yourself or for the people that you are helping as a member care worker. create the right expectations. Let them be aware of the culture shock that happens, but also the faith that happens afterwards, so that it might take longer than they think, but also that they're emotionally in a really difficult phase when they move. Let them also be preparing, what I was saying earlier about saying goodbyes. Let that raft go on. So the second thing you see there. I also want to zoom into the support team. Ryan was sharing it yesterday on all the different support areas, and we can't emphasize on that more. We understand that you're a missionary yourself, and with your family, you're alone on the field often, but having that support team back home is so important. Let them be involved in the process that you are doing, but also ask them beforehand, hey, I'm coming back and I have no idea how I am going to be emotionally. I have no idea maybe practically what I'm going to do. Would you pray with me? Would you be around me? Would you be proactive? And the fourth thing that I'm put down proactive community around you, and that ties along with that support team. A proactive, often, and I'm Dutch, and our Western cultures are often, if you're going to, if you need something, just let us know. And that's such a great sentence. If you need something, let us know. Often our churches are like that, or our families and friends, but it doesn't work. It sounds great, but when you're emotionally unstable and not aware of your heart, because it's overwhelming, you do not need that sentence. You need people to continually contact you, to continually ask you questions, and to pull you out of your situation. And that's something I think that is one of the biggest preparations you can do to prepare your social networks, to prepare the social networks of the people that you are guiding. Let them be proactive. Let them be pulling on your heart, and you're knocking on your door. How are you doing? Come along, have dinner with me, and not only after the first 3 months, but the first year. You need them, and they're like the cushion that can help you sleep better. Definitely, 100%. So that's very difficult to do, because you also ask your communities and your social networks to be more involved in your life. So you have to be, first of all, you have to be honest. You have to be vulnerable by sharing that beforehand, and you need to let them also in. So it's a two-way street, but it's definitely asking your social networks more of an effort to put into your life. Faith community, I put them on there. It is so important to have the right church around you. And what I've seen a lot of missionaries, when they return, they struggle. They struggle spiritually because their faith community might not be, or their church might not be at the same level as you are used to in, for example, your missions organizations. So spiritually, you might not be at the same level, and that can be difficult. So being aware of that you beforehand, that you're not at the same level as your church, that's okay. Just be aware of it, but be sure you are entering into a faith community. If you're just like, well, I'm just moving to another city and I have no idea, it's going to be a struggle, because that a community of faith around you, however where they are maturity spiritually wise, it's going to help you. It's going to help you with people that are ready to jump in, or just where you can just be there on Sundays or at worship nights, and you can just be there, and it's going to be that input from the outside that you need. It's part of that proactive situation feeling. It's coming from the outside, and because you are internally struggling often, it's helpful to get something from the outside. It's a base, it's a platform where you can rely on. All right, we go to the right column, accountability. So from before you leave, make sure you have accountability, not only in your country of your passport where you're going to, but also make sure that you stay in contact with the friends that you made, or the people that you are involved in, or people that are have been mentoring you in YWAM or whatever organization you are. Stay in contact with them. often we know when you leave, you know, if they don't see you anymore, especially with a very vibrant community, it's sometimes hard because you left and their lives continue there, and you are now in a new country, in your old country, home country, and things, you know, start to be difficult. But be sure to get a little bit relative. See, okay, where am I in my process? And when you stay in contact with people from your back home, it's going to help you process the transition better. If you do not, if you just leave, uproot completely, and have no contact anymore, often that helps less than staying in contact a little bit. With that, what we see that is very helpful is to return, if you can, to your guest nation after a year or something. Most of the time, you see your own change after a year. You see where you are emotionally, where you are with your calling, and you see that people moved on, but you also moved on. So you have two ways, and it helps you emotionally to put a place to put everything in the right perspective. Sometimes we leave, and then we think when you come back after a year, you see things change so much that you also see, okay, they are also moving on. It's not the same as I thought it was. So it helps you with the process. Debrief and coaching. We can't emphasize that more. Do debrief when you come home. Plan it in. If you don't feel like it, I don't care. Do it. Plan it in. Just be very obnoxious with yourself, and just put a debrief in there, because my own experience, I didn't do it the first year, and that was not the right decision, but I didn't feel like it. No, it's so good to do, just maybe get a kickstart into your whole process. Whenever you come home, within the first 3 months, I would say do a debrief, and do a debrief well. Don't just do a couple of hours. If you've been gone for years, don't do one debrief in one day or one afternoon. It's going to take you more time. But debrief is not it. It's not the only thing. It's not like even if you did a week of debrief, you still need coaching. You still need more stuff after that, because if what we see sometimes, debrief happens really good, helps a lot, and then you're alone and you move on, and you're like, you struggle with your things here. So we encourage to get a coaching track, get mentoring, be for your side, be proactive in that, and try to do that before you move. So before you move, before you literally move, physically move, make sure you get a debrief and try to get a coaching thing started already. That helps you to not think about it when you're in that reverse culture shock. And I see a hand raised up. What's up?
I've heard it recommended that you wait for a month after the move or the transition to get a debrief. Would you recommend a month or 3 months, or I get, of course, it's very unique for each situation, but is there a general optimal time to get a debrief?
Yeah, good question. I definitely, would emphasize on it depends on every situation. Maybe practically it doesn't work often to do it within the first 4 weeks, because you're moving, maybe with your family, you're trying to relocate, and putting practically a debrief in there is not great. So I would then go along with the 1 month, but a set time is not there. Just don't do it too late. Don't wait half a year or a year before you do a debrief. Do it soon. Does it answer your question a little bit? All right. So debrief and coaching, so great. Do it. Do coaching. Get someone on your side. Don't be too proud of it. You say like, well, I coach people myself, I don't need it. No, you need it. Just the accountability. It's great. Second one, stay true in worship. Express your emotions and lament. So I don't know, do you guys know what lamenting is? Lamenting, it's in the Bible, it's biblical. Third of the Psalms are about lamenting. A while ago, we did it with our member care team in the Netherlands. We did a workshop lamenting, a sort of seminar. It was great. really helped us to put that in the right perspective. But what it actually means, and super simple to say, is to be honest about your emotions with the Lord. And sometimes our spiritual, no, our hearts are in the place of like, we need to be stronger than this. I've been in a faith community, I stand in faith, I see miracles, but then you are going through re-entry and you moved home and you're struggling with your emotions and you're like, I just have gotta have faith and God's good. And you start to like do that, you know, stubborn, you start to ignore your emotions. And I see a lot of people do that. And maybe not all guys will say that, but most men struggle with it more, with this more. Gotta be strong for our families or whatever. God's good, God's great. But then, you know, at the end, there's still a lot of things going on in the heart. Be honest with the Lord. Just express your emotions. Say that things suck and they're not great and that you're struggling with it. It's okay. He's not offended by it. And I think a lot of people need to hear that too. Say your emotions, say your struggles, but do it with the Lord. You can also do it with others, but let them join you in your process with the Lord. Lamenting is always with the Lord, and it's not complaining, but it is expressing your emotions and taking time for it. Just taking a moment of expressing your emotions and your honest emotions, because we see David do that all the time in the Psalms. His honest emotions. Why are these enemies around me? And why he's just struggling with that all the time. And then you have that phase of lamenting where you are saying, but this is not correct. I am a son of God. I am a daughter of God. I have a calling on my life. Why do I not see it? And then you remember who God is. You see, it's a process of expressing your emotions, remembering what is true and remembering who is true. And then you have room again in your heart to praise him and to worship him. Sometimes that worship is struggling because we are not honest with our emotions. So I think it's you can maybe see and hear about my heart that is I'm very passionate about that. Maybe because it's also a personal thing, but definitely it's important to do worship. And also, if you do not have a faith community where you can do that, maybe where you cannot go into maybe a worship night, just seek that out. Do it online or go for one Saturday evening, go to another city where they have a worship night, but seek that continually. Of course, pray for your new calling is the next thing. Be aware of what is next for me, and let the Lord show that to you. Sometimes we know that beforehand. You know, we prayed for years and then the Lord is ending a season and we know there's a new season happening, new doors have been opened. That's great. Sometimes we just feel there's a season ending, and many missionaries have that. They feel like the season is ending, but they're not sure what the next step is. So you got to pray for it continually. Lord, open the doors and open my ways. But what we do see is that there's time for your emotional process, and that takes time. It takes more than 1 week or 3 months. It takes a little longer. All right. If we are looking into another side, it's returning well turns into PR for the organization. And what I mean with that is if you'll just take YWAM. If you're struggling and you're not emotionally going well through your process and reentry, you're going to be frustrated and you're going to look often negatively to your time in YWAM or in your mission field. And that's not a great PR. So if we can guide our people into a better way of processing their reentry time, they will be an advocate for YWAM. They will be an advocate for mission fields, and they will be an advocate, maybe even a connection point where even missions or your organization can connect to with that individual because they're promoting YWAM or they once were a YWAM. So it's I also think it's a continual thing. And what we were talking about earlier, they might even be open for a buddy system for other people that are returning. And the last one is how to prepare is research. So Hannes was sharing it on Wednesday. Make sure to do exit interviews. And exit interviews are not debriefs. Exit interviews are interviews where you collect information for the team that you were a part of or the member was a part of. And it will give information like what things went well what things didn't go so what things didn't go so well, and we can maybe prepare better for, or can dive into. An that's one thing, an exit interview, but also as a member care worker, stay in contact with all these people. You can also always send out later questionnaires. Hey, you've been gone for a year now. How do you feel? We did an exit interview, but maybe there are other insights that we are missing out on. So that's a different kind of interview, or poll that you can do. You can also do more research, like what I was doing with my thesis. But prepare as a member care worker. What kind of developments do we see in the world that would help our missionaries in their returning to their home country? All right, so there's a lot of things. There are way more things to prepare for. The one thing that I find very important is to, as a member care worker, to start a custom project with the person that is leaving. So let's say someone is leaving and they're giving you a heads up, and at that point you're like, all right, what if we set a period of time that overlaps your moving time? And Kim was sharing earlier that there is a base in Canada that is doing this. And thank you for sharing that, Kim. It's something we're trying to do in member care here in the Netherlands too. We're trying to put in a place that people are not just out of sight, out of heart, but they will stay in contact. And that we set up meetings every couple of months in the first year. And that we see where are people at? What are kind of things that they might need? We're not psychiatrists. We're not per se coaches. But we are people that can be a network, and we can stay in contact and see where people are, what kind of needs they might be. And it also gives us, again, at the end, the information as a member care worker, but at the same time, there's that contact for the individual. They don't feel alone, which is one of the biggest things. They always have that connection again, like, hey, yes, I'm great to be in contact with you. Hey, this is where I'm going through right now, and pray for this. It's just a great place to stay in contact. So be sure to make a custom project per individual. Look with them 6 months before or even longer. What are the needs that you have? How are you financially? How are your social networks? So a lot of things you can do about that. Yeah. So that's about it for the preparation phase. Just want to give you guys some space for still ask some questions and answers, maybe from me or maybe from each other. If you have anything about the session of today. So a little recap, we went through the process of what is reentry. We went through the different phases of David Pollock he made from before leaving and after leaving. I talked a lot about the reverse culture shock and how is that different, and the emotional phases of that, and how we can prepare for it. And where I still want to emphasize on is being proactive as member care workers.
It might be a bit more personal because maybe I can be case study, because I'm sensing a closure, as I said. And so I will be starting a sabbatical in January for 3 months. I'm also scheduled for debriefing in November, which is before leaving. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it was best to do it afterwards. Maybe I can have another one afterwards. And so my question, because of what you're saying, is that a departure should be at least 6 months to a year. I was thinking of leaving I've been in this city where I'm working for 25 years with YWAM. Is it too soon to leave after 3 months and bring closure? I do feel pressure. I'm wondering about going on a sabbatical and maybe coming back to bring more peaceful closure. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a more personal question, but.
Well, it's a good case also for others to listen to, like, hey, how do you process that phase of leaving? Because all the things that I've been sharing is like they're like an ideal situation, very much in advance where you're going or that you're leaving at least. But often that's not per se the situation. And when you have when you're in your situation, maybe there's not the right amount of people around you to work with you. But you have to be in a good place. And if you feel like I'm actually really tired, I have no energy, then a sabbatical first might be the right way for you to do that.
Yeah.
It's just very important that you are not leaving a place where you invested in so much of your life with pain and with a lot of open situations and not being able to say goodbye. So if you're saying, well, I'll just take a couple of months of sabbatical and I'll return, I think I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
Just that you were preparing well for your season.
Yeah. But everything you shared has been very helpful. Thank you so much for your teaching.
Great.
I have a question, and you might have answered this already. I'm not sure. How long would you say a debrief session would go? Like a week, more than a week? Do you have like a week and then a check-in monthly? Like, what does that look like?
All right. So that's very depending on where you would do that. We mentioned it before in one of the other sessions about Le Rocher. That is a European-based debrief center, and they're awesome. They're not from YWAM. I believe they're out of YWAM originally, but they're professionals and they do different options. They give different options. So a week, and I believe they also have someone with a couple of days. But I would just say, at least do a week. Doesn't matter how long you've been gone, just do a week. So it was good. And then I would say it will be a coaching sessions after that. But if a debrief organization can offer you that, that's great. If you need to find that externally in another organization, then you need to do that. So
a week, what are we talking about? Like 2 hours a day, 6 hours a day? I know it's going to depend, but what is your ideal for a week for debrief daily?
Well, I think you need to be honest to yourself. Like, what do I need? And if you need rest, and for example, Le Rocher, that organization lets you also be internally, so you stay there overnight, and so they're full days. And then depending on the organization's own setup, it's going to be a whole day or mornings off or processing for yourself and afternoon sessions. So it depends on the organization. What I would just say is like, make sure that you put in a debrief when you return home or even before. Make sure you do it. But if you're at a place at the end of that debrief or a month after, like, I need more, then do more. So I would just say do it, get a good organization, do it. And if you feel you need more debrief, then do that. But practically it just depends on your own situation, how much you need, of course. Yeah. I hope that answers a little bit of your question.
Yeah, that's great.
Right.
Can I just add in a thought from a personal experience with that? Yeah. What I found is the debriefing is often stirs thoughts. And then when we enter into be it a sabbatical or the re-entry, we are going through different phases. And I found it helpful to already agree on regular reconnections, to regular check up and see, have the debrief or the coach ask, how are you going? Help you to make sense of what you're experiencing. So I think in my experience, I find it great to have the debriefing week and then later on having like check-ins just to not get lost in the loneliness, in the difficulty to adjust. So I don't know, sometimes you maybe feel like I have now my debriefing, now I should be well. But I think the debriefing stirs things and we're walking through a not easy process with re-entry. And it really can help to know after 3 months, after 6 months, after 9 months, I again will check in with my debriefer, with a coach.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Heidi. Yeah. Do we have some other questions or thoughts?
Hi.
Hi.
I just have a question about, is there, maybe you've mentioned it, I've written a few names down. If staff needs a little bit of coaching, but they're not comfortable with having coaching with somebody on base. For instance, we're in Amsterdam. We have 2 people that give counseling, but I've noticed that a lot of people that are here on base, they don't want to necessarily talk with them. So I'm trying to figure out who can I recommend them to. And for one instance, a family, they're going through some struggles. And I said, well, I've heard that you can get counseling through your doctor. And she says, oh, but it's so expensive, Debbie. And we have to be really mentally ill and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, there has to be something in between here, but I don't know what to offer them.
Mm-hmm. So are you specifically asking for Dutch people?
Sure. I'm just wondering who I could, I mean, for all the Amsterdam staff, we have over 100 people. Who could I recommend someone to go to locally?
Specifically for debrief or for counseling in general?
Just debrief or counseling, for just coaching.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that, I think that's a hard question to answer. Okay. I wouldn't have a lot of practical go-to because it is a YWAM-based general. I know as a Dutchie and as member care in Heidelberg, we do have a lot of more networks, but I don't have them ready to go. Heidi, do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, this would not be in person on-site, this would be online. There is the Barnabas Coaching Network, Wolfgang Jani, who offers the focus coach training. He is running that. And many coaches, many people who made the coaching training signed up on that network. And that's a place where somebody who is seeking for coaching can ask to be connected with a coach. The Barnabas Coaching Network, Wolfgang Jani is running that.
All right. Somebody else have a thought or a question?
I feel like I want to segue right into that, just as a curiosity, because it ties into that. Is there some sort of attempt being made to create a cross-ministry network of member care resources? Obviously, you have some there in the Netherlands. You just talked about that one. We know a few people that are doing this just sort of individually across various ministries. Is there some sort of a attempt, like I said, of a network being put together so that there is like a central database for this information? Because it feels like one of the biggest challenges is finding that network, is finding those people to support you. And while member care is growing as an entity, if you will, across ministries, because the need for it is being realized, I feel like in many ways it's still very disconnected. Like there's pockets and there's ministries and stuff, but a lot of people don't know about each other. It's not networked the way like YWAM is. Like you can find a YWAM base anywhere. You just got to type in the place and YWAM online and you're going to find a base. But this is a little bit more disjointed. So I don't know, is there some sort of an effort being put together for that?
Heidi, I'm going to give this one to you.
Thank you. Yes, actually, that's something that's very much on our heart as the member care resource team for YWAM Europe. What we noticed is that we have so many people who have such a heart for member care in YWAM internationally, but they are not connected with one another. And we found what you also say, this desire to be connected and to benefit from one another, to learn from one another. So we are relatively new. We started out here in Europe as a member care training team running Missionary Care Foundations courses. And just recently, we're now transitioning into growing into the member care resource team for YWAM Europe. And what we would like to do is have more people joining our team, people who carry a piece of expertise. Member care is very broad. And often the expertise, like now from Ryan and Dick, sits at one base and the others miss out of that. And we would like to use these synergies and make this expertise and experience available to a broader community of member care providers within YWAM. We're working right now on that, how that can work. We're functioning with project groups, for example, that these seminars we are the project group for online training. So that's how these trainings come up. But we would like to see a project group for contingency planning, for emergency response, for pre-field preparation, for re-entry, for trauma debriefing, where we can draw on the experience and the knowledge and expertise of different people. And it's developing. I'm looking into 3, 5, 10 years, not that hopefully things will happen before 10 years are over, but it takes time to make it more available. Right now we are in the process to invite more people and to make project groups. We're also in the process of creating a web page with resource material. There is great resource material. And when we speak about resources, it's the material, but it's also the people. Who knows a good debriefer? Who knows a good trauma debriefer? Who has experience with risk assessment and stuff like that? So it's in the process. And as YWAM is very dynamic and is very fluid. If you have ideas, if you have input, if you have questions, email, because we're shaping it right now as it continues to grow. But it's really started with us observing the need of member care providers to connect. We have many great member care providers in YWAM, and it would be great if we could use the synergies with one another.
All right. So if there are no other questions, yeah, I would leave it like this. Heidi, I want to give it back to you. Thank you all for your time, for your focus on me and on the forest on the back and the mountain earlier on. Thank you so much for listening to this, for me, in a very important topic. And as you can see, there's a lot of things in details, very customized for everyone. Everyone is different. For everybody, it's a difficult or a different situation, and maybe for the one more difficult than for the other. But it definitely needs attention. So thank you so much for your guys' time, and have a wonderful weekend if I don't talk to you anymore.
Yay! Big thank you very much for creating this awareness of the challenges of re-entry and also how it can be emotionally tired. Already having that awareness is helpful. And then thank you for bringing in how we can prepare for ourselves. Corleo said you were standing before a transition, and also how we can help others, just being aware of having a support team, doing debriefing, staying honest in our worship. So helpful things. Thank you. We're at the end of our 3 days. We heard a lot, and we're all coming from different contexts, from different ministry settings. And as you listened, there were maybe things where you thought, oh, great, in our community and our base, we already have that in place. And for other things, you maybe thought, oh, that would really help if we would have that. That would benefit our team, our base, our community so much. And yesterday, Ryan said something that really caught my attention. He said, what would be if over the next 10 years, we would make 10 good decisions for our base or for our team? He shared about the financial policy they have in YWAM Heidelberg, that you needed a budget of 600 euros, now it's 800 euros a month, so that you could start ministry with the goal to reduce stress for their new staff. So that was a decision they made. And what if every year over the next 10 years, we would make a good decision for our base and our community? And as we still have some time, I would like to put that question before you. What is one thing that you think, yes, That's something we really would like to tackle in our community. That's something I would like to bring back to my community, to my base, to bring back to the leaders I work with. Let's take afterwards some time. I make a brief recap over the 3 days. Maybe this stirs your thoughts. And then let's take around 5 minutes where you just can ponder what is one thing that you think that would be a great decision for 2023 to establish in our base or start in our base. So we heard Ryan talking about pre-field preparation, about the chart with the challenges and the support. It needs both. He talked about the importance of people being sure and clear about their calling, about building a support group before we go, for emotional support, prayer support, financial support. And he talked about the whole issue of fundraising, which is a big issue, pre-field. Then we had Hannes speaking about on-field orientation or on-field season. The orientation first week when we arrive, how can we help people to arrive well? All the adjustments, the physical, cultural, political, emotional adjustment. How can we help people in that? And then the long season of ministry years. How can we as member care providers help to manage the enormous stress on being on the missions field, managing conflict, relationships, continue to develop? And then also in the on-field phase, the whole closure and exit. How can we help people to close well and to exit well? And then we heard today Dick speaking about re-entry and how we can support people and help to prepare. So please take 5 minutes to ponder about, is there something God is stirring in your heart? One thing that you would like to take back and in cooperation with your leadership, bring to your community, to your base, and to your team?
I think maybe especially on this topic, but also many other topics, I think our base just needs more member care workers. I think I'm the only one that is full-time, and even for me, it has to be part-time with my kids. But just to have more people that this is on their heart, because there is so much to learn and there's so much to do. I think, it gets even a little overwhelming thinking of, even when they go back home with re-entry, to keep up with them. It's like, oh wow, like we don't have manpower for that. And I think many bases don't, but wow, how wonderful would it be? And like Ryan was saying, like people are worth it. People are worth keeping up with. And sometimes that makes all the difference, even for their spiritual walk with the Lord. I mean, I know many missionaries that have walked away from the faith after going home. Mm-hmm. So maybe that can make all the difference, I think. But yeah, for people to have more member care workers, and for those of us that are member care workers to know how to kind of recruit or initiate other people into it, be very, very helpful. So that's my thoughts, my reflections from this 3 days.
Thank you for sharing, Gillian. And it very much helps if you're not alone. One for the workload and the other just for praying and processing together and bouncing off ideas. Yes, good point. Thank you.
Carl and I are in the process of helping to develop an orientation class, and someone who came to volunteer here was a cultural expert, and she was a diplomatic child, so she moved all over the world. On our hearts, we don't know if it'll happen, but I'd like to see an onboarding orientation that's 2 weeks, but then within 3 months have adaptive classes So the dream would be to have people work maybe 3/4 of their time and take these adaptive classes for months. And then the people that are getting prepared to leave, they would have re-entry classes and debriefing. Because I think it's natural for missions orgs and just ministries to kind of rush and to almost push people into their ministry. Oh, you'll be fine, join the team. And emotionally, a lot of times people are just, they're unsettled, but they're like, oh, I need to grab on to work. So that would be my hope.
Wow, this sounds like sustainability. Set up people for long-term sustainability. Maybe we will come back to you and ask you for your good program to share it with others. Thank you, Debbie.
I think an accessible resource list of where to get these things and who's doing what and where to get debriefing and who can we talk to if I need therapy and things like that is also really helpful. A lot of people are thinking, okay, I need debriefing, but who do I go for that? You know, where do I go? What do I do? What does that look like? You know, I've had 2 hours with this person and they told me to just give it to Jesus. You know, I mean, Jesus is good, but I think Jesus is probably for a little bit more than just that. So I think having those resources available for people that they're easily accessible would be super helpful thing to have on hand.
Yes, absolutely. And we're just talked about that. If you have anything you want to share, let us know. We're really trying to put things together on a web page.
I thought it was interesting what Dick said about starting a custom project with the staff before they're leaving our team. And I think many times YWAM is such a fluid organization, so easy on, easy off. And oftentimes young people have left us within a couple weeks notice, where we really haven't had that run up to really start accompanying them, where they are leaving with their emotions all over the place. And where oftentimes once people are gone from your team, you kind of forget about them. You know, you're like 3 months later, oh, where are they now? Oh, I have no idea. Where I think it would be great to really continue following up with them and to help them in transition to whatever their next steps are, so that they don't look back at the time at YWAM as just a loss or just see the negative points, but actually help them, you know, through debriefing, through continuous just fellowship and helping them to feel like, you know, like their team still cares about them. That's something that I would like to see. And at the same time, of course, I have some feelings like Jillian also expressed, you know, like how can we actually do that with the manpower that we have? How can we offer that? But that's definitely something that's on my heart and that I'm taking with myself.
Yeah. And this speaks so much about valuing people for who they are and not just for their workforce. And this speaks loud. Kim, when we met before the seminar, you shared about the base who is doing that, right?
Yes. Well, actually, Johanna is at the base. It's at in Dunham in Canada, in Quebec. So Emily, who's on the member care group there, or overseeing member care, actually my wife Cindy knows more about that. Johanna, can you describe what Emily does?
I mean, I've never been a part of doing it, but I know we do have, she does have a bunch of questions and forums and stuff that she goes, so she takes time with everyone before they leave our staff team to debrief, to make a timeline, yeah, and just to close things off well. But yeah, I haven't actually done it yet, and so I don't know a whole lot about it. But yeah, the heart really is to help people transition. And so I think a big key part of it is making a timeline where you write down all of the things from your time here, and then just talking through it.
So very encouraging to hear. Thank you, Johanna.
I've been trying to think a bit about it. One thing that maybe isn't that directly connected to it, but kind of, is that I would love to somehow be able to check in on the people that have been with us as base, either as staff or missionaries, but either like have a call with them or email a bit to check in, like, are you doing good? Like, you found a community where you are? And yeah.
This speaks into what Dick shared, the feeling of being lonely. Thank you, Heidi.
Well, I'll share a bit of what I do, and that something that Cindy and I, this is what we do full time, and we will have a Zoom call once a month with someone who is gone either on sabbatical or on has gone back home to their home country, and just to reach out and have a time of talking. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Hopefully, that they're going to do their own debriefing, or they're going to have a debriefing time. So it's not a purpose necessarily for debriefing, although we do that as well, but just to check in and let them be able to talk with somebody who understands what it's like to be on the field and what it's like being back home. So just that reaching out means a whole lot for them to be able to talk to something. So it doesn't mean a huge time commitment. It does mean intentionality and just putting that in the calendar for reaching out. And as you had said, Heidi, that speaks so much of value of the person. And so we're not, oh, they're gone. Oh, right. Here goes the ship. We're just continuing with the work. And and speaks to the Christian community and caring that is so valuable.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing. And I think you're never lacking people who are looking for this kind of conversations, right?
We have job security.
You have job security, yes.
Yeah, I was just texting Heidi, since we are on the same base. So we work with the staff members, and I also work with the field workers, but to have more structure of how we can debrief with every staff before they are leaving, and with the field workers. So on Monday, we are meeting up with every staff, like in a lunch, with talking about transitions and people on their way into YWAM, people on their way out of YWAM and staying. But I see that before people are leaving, often in December and in June, and they often are a bit in a hurry. So it can be a bit hard to have debrief, the debrief that I needed. And I see we lack also to check in with them after they have left. So I think building more structures and I think that can help us having more system on that everyone is taken care of.
Oh, this is so powerful. If you have it as a part of your structure, it more surely will happen. And it's the intentionality there. Wow, great. Thank you, Gro, for sharing. Very inspiring. Anybody else who would like to share?
We were just sitting here discussing a little bit, and going back to your original, what's one thing that could potentially be implemented in your community or on your base? In our experience in the past, I think basically what happens is that when you're in ministry, Sunday church is ministry, but so is the rest of your week. And the concept of a Sabbath can really get lost in that. Mm-hmm. So having something set up on the base where there is an implementation of protecting that, where every person, you as an individual, must take a Sabbath, not optional, because it's so easy to just end up working because what you're doing is ministry oriented. 7 days a week, and never really getting that time alone with the Lord, or for, you know, for especially for those who tend to recharge as an introvert, which I feel like we have a lot of on the ministry field. And what we do as missionaries is basically be with people 24/7, because people are our ministry. And so having something in there, I mean, you look at it this way, the world will always be on fire. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but there will always be things that are needed. And as missionaries, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to go to where that need is, put the fire out in the love of Jesus. But that's always going to be there until the second coming of Christ. It will never go away. So recognizing the need to spend time with him, and maybe implement as a requirement, in the same way that you said a minimum income from support is required, a day of rest where you actually have to completely unplug from all of your things. You have to turn the computer off. You have to step away from your ministry role for a day and really spend that time with the Lord, or having a session with a counselor in that, whether it's a coach or a debriefer or whatever, having that time set aside and saying, this day is truly going to be my sacred. I don't do anything ministry oriented on this day. It's easy to do in the secular realm. I go to my job 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Now I take a day of rest because I'm not scheduled. I don't have to go into work. It's easy to separate those things there. It's much, much, much harder in the ministry. And so having something where it is clearly defined and required of each person is going to help with the longevity of health, I think, emotionally and spiritually. And it's going to make all of these other things we're discussing more effective, because there is a clear connection with the Lord that's never, you know, by neglect, you know, maybe diminished or even severed.
I think what you speak about is crucial for the long season of ministry phase. And I like that you not just say create awareness, but you're so specific about how, what is a good, nourishing Sabbath. Thank you. It's actually a topic we will have a seminar about in November, 15th and 16th of November. And it's so encouraging to hear. I think it's crucial. Thank you for sharing. Peter, I saw that you tried to say something as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about what we can do here at the base. And I realized that tomorrow it is 3 years we've been here at Restenäs. You know, and about half a year later, everything was closed down and we weren't allowed to meet anybody. You know why? And I did an MCFC 4 years ago to come into that. But since everything went closed down, it's been, yeah, a bit difficult to get those things started. One thing at this place, somebody said that when you come to Restenäs, you don't come to be there. You come because you're on your way to something, which I feel that if to build up something, we need to get people here that wants to stay here and do member care. And also another thing, I think there's quite a lot of member care done that isn't such that put in. So here we have, every summer we have field worker days, field workers coming here, and they get debriefs and things like that. I haven't been very much involved in it, but I talked to some of those involved in it and said, yeah, that's member care. Is it? They said, oh, yes, you're right. So they weren't, so to say, not, or what do you say, Eric? Do you agree with me or not? I don't know if he listen, he hears how he's, yeah.
Peter, can you repeat the actual question?
Yeah, do you agree with me that you were also in charge of this with debriefing the field workers and on those days? And I said that when I asked some of you who were involved, you really didn't think of it as that was being member care done. It was felt more like something that, yeah, everybody knew should be done. It was good for them and things like that.
I guess we have maybe not so much just called it member care, but of course that's what it is. And I'm thinking it would probably be good for all staff to go through that maybe once a year or something, not only the field workers.
Peter and Eric, thank you for sharing. It is so encouraging to hear all your thoughts and yeah, steps that you see that would be really great to take. Very encouraging. May God lead and bless you as you step out in the pace that He gives to step out. Also, just a big thank you to all of you for setting apart the time to join the seminar, to listen, to discuss. I feel we learned as much as from you as you learned from us. So thank you for engaging. If there is anything else you want to follow up from the seminar or otherwise, please contact us. Okay. Then, as it is Friday, I wish you all a wonderful, refreshing and good Sabbath rest. And see you hopefully in one of our other seminars. Bye, everyone.